is.
What are you doing?
There she goes.
What?
Hey, so what are you doing?
I'm making a phone call.
Ever wondered what relics of the past lurk in the corners of baby boomers' homes? Get ready to uncover 25 forgotten home items that will transport you back to a bygone era. Let's begin. Number 25. VHS tapes. Let's rewind to a time when Friday nights meant cruising the aisles of the video store, hunting for the perfect VHS tape to kick off a movie marathon. Boomers are known for their love of movies, and their collection of VHS tapes are a testament to this passion. Despite the rise of DVDs and streaming services, many boomers still enjoy the process of hunting for rare VHS titles and popping them into their VCRs for a cozy movie night. The grainy visuals and nostalgic charm of VHS tapes evoke memories of simpler times. The VHS tape was first produced in Japan in 1976 by the Victor Company of Japan Limited. It quickly gained popularity in Japan and soon made its way to the United States. The first VHS player was introduced in the US by JVC in 1977. At this point, the VHS tape competed with the Betamax tape, which was introduced by Sony in 1975. However, the VHS tape quickly gained the upper hand due to its longer recording time and cheaper cost. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the VHS tape became the standard for home entertainment. It allowed people to record their favorite TV shows and movies and rent or buy tapes at home. The VHS tape also allowed for creation of home video libraries, which became a popular trend. Movie studios saw the potential of the VHS tape and started releasing movies on video. This allowed people to watch movies at home instead of going to the theater. This shift in the movie industry led to the increased sales of VHS tapes. Number 24. Rolodexes. In the age of digital address books and smartphone contacts, boomers often maintain their trusty Rolodexes on their desks. They appreciate the tactile experience of flipping through the cards and jotting down notes by hand. These physical Rolodexes hold a lifetime of connections, representing a personal and curated network that boomers cherish and rely on for their professional and personal lives. Rest assured, the Rolodex isn't dead. People are still buying Rolodexes. A lot, actually, says Amy Zvosek, Consumer Affairs Specialist for Newell Rubbermaid, the company that makes Rolodexes. She says the bestseller is the classic rotary style, the one with the big black knobs you use to flip through contacts. The biggest complaint is card size. Everyone wants a 3x5 card size, and we don't manufacture that anymore, she says. The company's Rolodex line has shrunk over the years as more people started using smartphones and laptops to store contacts.
To purchase the paper tray ink stamp set, I have a few other stamps and things that I can use to make them. I'm sure you guys do too. If you have like grid stamps, etc., you can make them.
Now it's trying to stay relevant by making Rolodex brand iPad cases and stands. Number 23. Answering machines. Telephone answering machines were almost a fad. They were hindered for years by not being allowed to connect to the phone lines. Then a mix of cell phones and the phone company offering voicemail made the machines all but obsolete. Unless you are really young, you probably had one at some point though. Some had digital outgoing messages and a tape to record. Some had two tapes. But did you ever have that one that didn't connect to the phone line at all? Remember, there was a time when they couldn't. My family had one of these growing up, and after doing research to find it in an old catalog, I decided you might like to know how it really worked. If you grew up in the 1960s and 1970s, it is hard to imagine how little technology there was in an average person's home at the time. You probably had one TV and one wired telephone. You probably had a radio or two, and maybe even a record or tape player. If you were very fancy, you had a big piece of furniture that had a TV, a turntable, a radio, and a tape player in it. No cell phones, no computers, no digital assistant, and appliances were electromechanical and didn't have displays. So when you saw a new piece of tech, especially if you were a kid who didn't know what a hacker was, but still wanted to be one, it made an impression. Many boomers still use answering machines to screen their phone calls. They appreciate the ability to listen to messages in real time and decide whether or not to answer. Answering machines provide a sense of control and privacy, allowing boomers to maintain boundaries and prioritize their time and attention. Number 22. Carpet in bedrooms. If the 1970s were about one interior design trend, it was wall-to-wall shag carpeting, usually in eye-searing colors like bright orange. Carpets in bedrooms, especially shag rugs, were all the rave at one time in the distant past. Sometimes carpets covered chipped floors or linoleum. Some people don't like when their feet touch a cold floor, but floors with area rugs are more attractive. With wall-to-wall shag carpeting, chipboard ceilings, and bright orange and brown color schemes, there's no decade as polarizing as the 70s for interior design.
Traditionally, Turkish carpets are hand-woven by women.
Erik halısını
ilk temelini kurmak için çözgüden başlanır.
They wind the warp around a loom that keeps the threads taut.
It was indeed a love it or hate it decade. We loved it. Number 21, colored toilet paper. In the 70s, even the bathroom wasn't safe from the decade's love for color. Colored toilet paper, matching the bathroom's color scheme, was a quirky yet popular trend. Back in the day, we're talking the mid-50s to the mid-80s, all the major toilet paper brands offered alternatives to basic white bathroom tissue. You could find retro toilet paper in a variety of solid colors. Pastels to start, and bolder colors showed up in the 60s, and many offered colored patterns printed on white, too. It was super popular because people could match the roll to their bathroom fixtures, which at the time were usually often colorful, too. So what happened to that old-fashioned colorful toilet paper? It became less popular as people were worried about the effects of the dyes, both on their skin and in the water supply. It was thicker or stronger than regular white rolls, which led to it being less soft, and also meant many people had plumbing clogs and septic issues. People started to buy white bathroom fixtures again, meaning sinks, toilets, and tubs, and getting colorful TP wasn't necessary. And it cost more to produce colored or printed rolls, and people prefer cheaper options. It all but disappeared by the end of the 1980s. Number 20, shag carpet in bathrooms. On those cold winter evenings when your bladder absolutely won't let you sleep, you can't help but wish you could warm your tootsies on the cozy toilet rugs from your childhood. In the 70s, if you wanted to update your bathroom without spending more than a handful of car change, you could just switch out the color on your matching shag toilet seat covers and bath mats. Sounds super sanitary, right? Sanitary? Absolutely not. But stylish? Heck yes. Who wouldn't want to sit down on a fuzzy toilet cover while storing your favorite accessories on the float tank? Let's not forget the matching toilet liner and bath mats. Oh, where has the colorful bathroom decor gone? We'd like to take a moment of silence for many bathrooms completely covered in shag carpeting. Oh my gosh, the walls that were absolutely wrecked by the mold colonies that moved in.
And people walk on it and step on it and it gets really dirty, as you can see on this side, and this side doesn't get so dirty.
The bathroom trend can and should stay in the past. Number 19, Papasan chairs. Papasan chairs were to the 70s what waterbeds were to the 80s. Awesome in theory, but totally terrible. These bed-sized circular cushions sat precariously on the small drum-sized base and looked so inviting. Who wouldn't want to take a spin in a chair where you could curl up like a contented cat? But getting in and curling up wasn't the problem. With our lack of cat-like reflexes, it was the hope of ever getting out. One wrong move, and you had an injured ankle that was stuck between the frame and the base, along with a face full of shag carpet. But we'd be lying if we said we wouldn't still take our chances in one today. A Papasan chair is a large, rounded, bowl-shaped chair with an adjustable angle. The bowl rests in an upright frame traditionally made of rattan, but also sometimes made of sturdier wicker or wood. The base frame often has rings of 2 different diameters, with the larger intended to be upright to better support the bowl, and the smaller ring intended to be placed on the floor. This orientation is often mistakenly reversed, resulting in less stability for the upper chair. The cushion of the chair is typically thick velveteen material filled with cotton fluff similar to that of a futon. In traditional Papasans, the cushion can be removed and used outside of the sturdy frame. Papasan chairs are typically 30 to 60 inches wide and 35 inches deep. The Papasan chair gained popularity in the West when American World War II veterans brought them home from Asia, where they had been used in the Philippines and Japan for centuries. Number 18, mushroom everything. Wood wall hangings, fuzzy stools, dish towels. If it could have a mushroom on it, then it had to have a mushroom on it. Why were mushrooms all the rage? Take one look at the recreational activities, and it's not too big of a stretch to see why people were inspired by good old shrooms. These shroom-tastic decorations gave you and your friends' houses the ultimate madcap vibes. Mushroom decor was a staple of the 70s, popping up on knickknacks, wallpapers, kitchenware, and even clothing. These friendly fungi added a whimsical, psychedelic touch to the home.
Mushrooms provide a great employment opportunity, considering that their farming is easy with the minimum need for capital.
Embracing the era's love for nature and organic shapes. Number 17, crochet granny square afghans. Crochet exploded in the 1970s with its craft-oriented style and bright array of colors. Everyone had an aunt or cousin who could whip them up a beautiful crochet afghan in an afternoon. Getting sleepy in front of the Saturday morning cartoons? Just reach back behind you, and there's a vibrant and well-loved granny square blanket for you to cover up with. And these handmade blankets were just one of the many vintage household items to come out of the 1970s. These kaleidoscope creations of crochet brought homespun charm and a splash of color to the 70s home. Granny square blankets, with their vibrant colors and intricate patterns, offered comfort and style. Nobody knows who the first granny was, but she sure has provided a lot of fun for women who crochet. Number 16, wood paneling. Step inside a 70s time capsule, where wood paneling adorned every wall, adding warmth and texture to homes across the country. Wood paneling was the shiplap of the 1970s. Everyone's trendy home walls were decked in mid-tone wood panels. And we're not talking about a rustic cabin in the woods type of style. No, we're talking one too many cigarettes and this thing goes up in flames. Paneling wasn't just a building material, it was an interior design choice. Whether wood, cork, or even leather, it was a staple in many houses, adorning walls in living rooms, dens, and down in the basement where the party kept going. The thin, artificial-looking veneer darkened innumerable 70s rooms, and sometimes even the ceiling.
I then went through and sanded each board with 220 grit sandpaper, and this took a long time, but I'll just leave you with one time lapse.
All the better to show off the avocado or bright orange-colored shag that inevitably accompanied it. Number 15. Beaded curtains. Beaded curtains were another 70s staple that brought a playful, whimsical element to homes. Typically hung in doorways, these curtains of beads added a splash of color and sound to a room, creating a sense of intrigue. Beaded curtains have been in use in Asian culture for over 2,000 years, gracefully partitioning spaces with a kinetic, tinkling aesthetic both visually and acoustically pleasing. In the US, however, the beaded curtain concept didn't fully take off until the 1960s, though it did enjoy a brief period of popularity in the parlor doorways of Edwardians. And it was a trend that burned so brightly, and rather sadly burned out so quickly, that to this day, we still largely associate it with that period. In fact, beaded curtains practically qualify as a trope for hippies and the counterculture era, even though their decorative use was actually far from versatile. Whether formal or casual, this decor statement was more of a utilitarian part of a room's decoration than a functioning window covering in the usual sense of curtains. Though from the collection we've gathered here, there were clearly plenty of exceptions. Those mid-century designers were creative. Number 14. Gold-edged bedroom furniture with a faux French provincial style. The 70s penchant for glamorous decor was evident in the popularity of gold-edged bedroom furniture, often in faux French provincial style. These opulent pieces, with their intricate gold detailing and classic design, added a touch of sophistication and luxury to any bedroom. Sculptured cabriole legs, decorative overlays, and canopy finials of simulated wood. Dovetailed drawers, metal center guides, fully dustproof, hardboard drawer bottoms, plywood backs and sides, features French-styled sculptured simulated wood on many of the items.
All that leads to some extra texture on our paint, which I wanted.
Number 13. Terrariums. Terrariums, small gardens enclosed in glass containers, became a popular 70s indoor gardening trend. These miniature ecosystems, with their variety of plants and quirky decorations, added a green oasis to homes and offices alike. A terrarium is a small enclosure that is used to grow and display plants, basically a tiny indoor garden that is also beautifully decorative. They're typically made of glass or transparent plastic and can be closed or open, depending on the needs of the plants and the climate in which it is being used. Number 12. Wicker furniture. People love to bring the outside in with cane, rattan, or wicker furniture. The 70s obsession with bringing nature into the home extended beyond houseplants to include this lightweight and stylish furniture material that could be fashioned into so many different furnishings. Who needs a stable, hardy piece of furniture you could pass down for generations when you can get a flimsy piece of furniture that stabs you and disintegrates after a few years? Wicker was king in the 1970s. Whether it was waste paper baskets or outdoor lawn chairs, it needed to have that handcrafted look. And who cared if it was comfortable so long as it looked cool? Alongside the insurgence of antiquing during the decade, wicker made a comeback, despite the fact that the material had an irritable tendency to poke and prod at whoever sat on it. Wicker furniture had a brief revival in the 1960s and 1970s, when antique wicker furniture was trendy. After a period where Victorian-style decor was seen to be overly sophisticated, we again saw a resurgence of ornate wicker furnishings. This resulted in a renaissance of sorts as the beauty of wicker furniture was once again appreciated and welcomed inside and around the home. While the popularity of wicker furniture began to wane slightly during the 70s, the popularity of wicker remained steady throughout the next few decades. In recent years, wicker furnishings have become very popular and have been featured in many upscale commercial venues and beachside vacation resorts. Number 11. Record holders and cabinets. If you grew up in the 70s, we bet you've still got a sizable record collection. Any respectable music lover's house had to have at least one record holder. Though the more racks of records you had, the more cred you could get at the record bar. From simple metal trays to absolutely massive cabinets, your prized record holders aren't such a thing of the past anymore if today's vinyl sales are anything to go by. Any vinyl music lover will know that when it comes to storing records, it's almost as important as the actual record player. Whether it's a rack, stand, a cabinet dedicated to your precious presses, vinyl record storage is a design statement in itself.
And then I attached the trim with wood glue and finished nails. The trim instantly gave the entire console a much more finished look.
Number 10. Glass ashtrays. Ashtrays in one form or another have been used for centuries. However, it was in the 20th century, particularly during the mid-20th century, that ashtrays became ubiquitous household items. This was the era when smoking was not only widely accepted, but often considered fashionable. As a further sign of the times, ashtrays were commonplace in 70s homes. These receptacles came in various shapes and materials, reflecting the prevailing trends of the time, often doubling as decorative pieces, serving more of an aesthetic purpose than a functional one in many non-smoking homes. From the elegant sophistication of Art Deco to the bold and colorful designs of the 60s and 70s, vintage ashtrays offer a window into the changing times and styles of their respective eras. Needless to say, a dinner spread in the 1970s wasn't complete if the ashtray didn't sit right beside the butter dish or casserole. Just like parents before them, practically everyone in the 70s smoked something. And with all that wood paneling, you had to put those ashtrays somewhere. Thankfully, there were glass ashtrays at every 5 and dime, and souvenir ones perfect for sending to some distant cousins you really weren't close with. Number 9. Beanbag chairs. An icon of retro design, the beanbag chair was the ultimate in casual seating. Created in 1969 by Italian designers Piero Gatti, Cesare Paolini, and Franco Teodoro, this squishy piece of furniture embodied the laid-back vibe of the 70s. Vintage beanbags were so popular in the 70s because they were fun and super comfy, filled with pillowy soft polyestrine beads. The year 1968 was full of revolutions. Women were marching in the streets for equality, the civil rights movement was going full steam ahead, and the space race was underway. And at the end of the day, people didn't want to return home to the rigid antique chairs that their grandparents sat on. Times were a-changing. That's where the sacco came in, or as we know it today, the beanbag chair. The shapeless bag was first thought up by 3 young Italian thinkers, Piero Gatti, Cesare Paolini, and Franco Teodoro. They were part of the Italian radical design movement, which brought forth provocative designs like foam furniture and lip-shaped sofas. The 3 designers wanted to create a seat that could conform to any situation and mold around anybody. It wasn't a static piece of furniture, but one that adapted and changed with your needs. The trio just finished the design when Macy's called them to place an order for 10,000 chairs. The department store knew the shapeless seats would tap into the zeitgeist, so the trio turned to the manufacturer Zanata to produce their boundary-pushing design.
Just get it right there. Let's turn it back up. So, as you can see, there's definitely some big differences already that you probably noticed between the two.
Number 8. Knitting caddies. Before mass manufacturing completely changed the fashion industry, people often made their own clothing from scratch. Knitting and crocheting were 2 fiber arts that were incredibly common throughout the 20th century. But if you've ever tried to knit or crochet with a ball of yarn and know where to put it, you know it's like wrangling with a flopping fish out of water. That's where knitting caddies came in. Knitting caddies were fabric bags built into simple wooden and later metal frames. These foldable frames let you pick your projects up and take them wherever you want. They came in a huge variety of prints and fabrics. Knitting caddies, once essential for organizing yarn, needles, and patterns, have become less common due to changes in knitting habits. Today, knitters often use project bags, baskets, or digital tools to keep their supplies organized. However, some vintage knitting caddies can still be found in antique shops or cherished by collectors. Number 7. Tupperware. Tupperware has had a long and interesting history and has been a staple of our kitchens since the 1950s. Many people consider Tupperware one of the biggest inventions of the 20th century. After all, it revolutionized the ability to store food in airtight containers, and it had a presence in just about every kitchen in America. Earl Tupper, who lived from 1907 to 1983, asked for pure polyethylene pellets from DuPont to build Tupperware products in 1938. He developed the first product in 1946 in Leominster, Massachusetts. The polyethylene plastic containers could be used in households to contain food and keep them airtight, and featured a burping seal that was patented in 1949. The product became notable with a sail-through presentation idea held in a party setting. Tupperware developed a direct marketing strategy known as the Party Plan to sell products. The Party Plan, called Tupperware Party, enabled women of the 1950s to earn an income while keeping their focus in the domestic domain. Brownie Wise, who lived from 1913 to 1992, a former sales representative of Stanley Home Products, started organizing more of these parties and was soon made vice president of marketing in 1951. Later, she created Tupperware Parties, Inc. During the early 1950s, Tupperware products gained popularity and sales increased. The company continued the Tupperware parties and rewarded top-selling women.
एक तो मुझे सबसे अच्छी चीज लगती है इनमें ना कीड़े नहीं लगते हैं, चींटियां नहीं जाती हैं, क्योंकि मसला वही है.
Number 6. Board games. The 70s brought us more than just bell-bottoms and tie-dye. Board games thrived as family and friends lived a simpler life. People weren't glued to their screens with ears listening out for the next social media ping. The 1970s wasn't all dancing queens and disco fever, though. The Great Inflation caused hardship, and the Vietnam War brought headache. Board games, like always, were a wonderful form of escapism, being able to venture into imaginary worlds with your friends and family. During the 1970s, board games became a staple of family entertainment, riding a wave of popularity that brought people together around the kitchen or dining room table. Long before electronic games were available, classics like Monopoly, Risk, and Clue were found in nearly every household, offering hours of strategic enjoyment, friendly competition, and family fun time. This era also saw the introduction of innovative games like Dungeons & Dragons, which opened up new realms of imaginative play and storytelling, cementing board games' place in the social fabric of the decade. Nowadays, these 70 board games remain popular for their nostalgia and retro look. Board games like Cluedo, Battleship, and Mystery Date have a well-deserved revival. Number 5. Oil rain lamps. Similar to the iconic lava lamp, the rain lamp was popular in the 60s and 70s for its unique design that simulates raindrops. You can identify these lamps by their intricate sculpture in its center surrounded by thick, clear fishing lines. Although the centerpiece could resemble Aphrodite or Venus, some rain lamps will have a simple clock instead of a figure. A rain lamp can only be filled with mineral or paraffin oil for functionality, since other oils quickly grow rancid. While carrying the mineral oil across the fishing lines, the lamp's drops of oil mimic falling raindrops. What's special about a rain lamp? Aren't the slow-motion raindrops hypnotizing enough? Perhaps the curiosity surrounding a rain lamp derives from a similar interest in lava lamps and in-home aquariums. There's something about time slipping away as you gaze into the scenic droplets of oil.
Everything, took it apart. Seems to be working nice. All the strands aren't running right now, but I think it's just because it's...
Number 4. Touch-tone phones with old-fashioned push buttons. Between the rotary phones of yesteryear and the cell phones of today, there was the push-button phone of the 70s. It seemed lightning fast to dial compared to its predecessor. The new touch-tone Bell telephone, made by Western Electric, is actually an electronic musical instrument. Each button you touch causes it to produce a different combination of musical tones. Calling by touch-tone phone is not only melodious, it's faster. An average call can be completed seconds sooner than by regular dialing. It takes 140 intricate parts, including transistors, to produce just the musical tones required in touch-tone service. These parts must be made and put together precisely so that every tone is always on pitch, and it must remain exact as it is carried over transmission lines to a Bell Telephone Company central office. There, other electronic equipment made by Western Electric must respond perfectly in order that your call can be sent on its way in seconds. Touch-tone phones opened the way to increased versatility in communications. They paved the path for advanced services, including communicating with computers and other remote devices. While the original touch-tone phones had 10 keys, AT&T later added the star and the pound keys for specific functions. So while the physical touch-tone phones may have faded, their impact on communication technology remains significant. Number 3. Console stereo systems. Before the days of AirPods and Flow headphones, stereo consoles stood as a sort of monument to music. With a turntable and radio built in, these decorative pieces of furniture were as much about style as they were about sound. Up until the 1950s, record players and big console radios were common living room fixtures all across America. For much of that time, phonograph speakers were small and sounded quite tinny. The entire experience changed when these vintage console stereos came on the market. Cabinets that combined a record player, an amplifier, and speakers, and often there was a built-in radio too. They weren't just technology, they were furniture. Popular in the 1970s, stereos were whole systems, some so intricate that they rose in towers up the wall. These vintage stereo cabinets and decorative consoles helped bring marvelous music into millions of homes. The modern equivalent, a tiny speaker that plays music from cell phones, can't compete. While the popularity of stereo console waned, it never entirely disappeared. Today, collectors and audio enthusiasts alike cherish vintage stereo consoles. Modern reproductions cater to those who appreciate their aesthetic and all-in-one convenience. Number 2. Bush radios. Back before the internet and satellite radio, there was only AM and FM, and folks in the 70s listened to it on devices made just for that. Immersing oneself in the world of vintage Bush radios is akin to opening a captivating book that tells a story of innovation, style, and auditory pleasure. Since its inception in 1932, Bush Radio has been a celebrated name in British communication. The company has gifted the world with products that balance technical with aesthetic appeal, and none more so than their original radios. Back to the devices, Bush's original radios were born out of a period of great progress, and they revolutionized the market with their simplicity and durability. Some of the most iconic models, like the Bakelite Bush DAC 90A and the Transatlantic TR82C, still carry a charm unmatched by modern counterparts. With their robust dials, large speakers, and cabinets in wood or molded Bakelite, these models embodied both the aesthetics of their era and Bush's commitment to quality. Number 1. Console TVs. A far cry from today's sleek screens, the console TV was a mammoth piece of technology featuring wooden housing, often doubling as a credenza. These colorful television monsters were the focal point and centerpiece in living rooms across America. A console television is a type of CRT television, most popular in, but not exclusive to, the United States and Canada. Console CRT televisions are distinguished from standard CRT televisions by their factory-built, non-removable wooden cabinets and speakers, which form an integral part of the television's design. Best suited to television sizes of under 30 inches, they eventually became obsolete due to the increasing popularity of ever larger televisions in the late 1980s onward. However, they were manufactured and used well into the early 2000s. Console televisions were originally accommodated in approximately rectangular radiogram-style cabinets and included radio and record player facilities. However, from approximately the mid-70s onwards, as radiograms decreased and hi-fi equipment increased in popularity, console televisions became more cuboid in shape and contained most commonly television and radio receiving features, and less commonly the addition of an 8-track player. Companies that made these types of televisions include Zenith, RCA, Panasonic, Sony, Magnavox, Mitsubishi, Sylvania, and Quasar. And there you have it, my friends. 25 forgotten home items that only baby boomers will remember. Did any of these items bring back memories for you? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more nostalgic content. Until next time, stay tuned.